Good afternoon, this is Brown at IF Brown, and today we're going to be talking about Invasion on DVD. And Invasion is a movie that's a part of the found footage horror genre, which is a genre that I've been fond of for quite some time. And I'm always on the lookout for something within this particular genre. And there's it's like anything else. You got some good movies, you got some bad movies, and then you got the ones kind of in between. And so what kind of made me interested in renting this one over at Movie Trading Company, by the way, was the fact that it was directed by a gentleman named Albert Pyun. I hope I'm saying his name right, Pyun. Anyway, Albert Pyun is a gentleman who's well known within the B movie community. And he's done movies like The Sword and the Sorcerer, Cyborg, Nemesis, Mean Guns, and and for those of us who are kind of keeping count of the comic book movie adaptations, he directed the '90s version of Captain America, and to be honest, wasn't that good of a movie, but that just kind of gives you the idea of the variety of movies that the guys directed. And even if you're not necessarily into the B movie genre, odds are you've probably seen at least one of his movies at some point. But he does tend to stay almost exclusively within the B movie genre, and he happens to be a director who, in my opinion, he's never done a movie that's straight up good, but he has done a few movies to where I would actually say, they're decent. Like you can see a good movie trying to come out, but, various factors keeping it from being so, but, it's still worth watching. But more often than not, you'll get a movie that's just sort of ho-hum with a few moments of liveliness, or just a straight up bad movie. So yeah, he's never really broken out of, this territory. He's had a few flirtations with mainstream success earlier on in his career, but not so much these days. And so this movie, however, it was made in 2005, the year after I graduated from high school, come to think of it. And I heard about this movie, and years ago, and I'd always been wanting to check it out because you have a genre of film, the found footage genre, that opens itself up to a whole avenue of low budget filmmaking. And then you have Albert Pyun, who is one of the most well known figures within low budget movie making. And he took a shot at doing a found footage movie, and it piqued my interest. But it wasn't until just a couple of days ago that I finally was able to watch this movie. Excuse me. And I gotta say though, I'm glad I finally saw it, just to sort of sate my curiosity. But I'm glad that this wasn't a purchase. It was worth renting, but it definitely wasn't good enough to say want to own or anything like that. But anyway, though, the story, it's about there's this, it's sort of in this California town, I think, or at least that's what it says on the back of the DVD. And there's the thing is, the movie, it's shot from the perspective of the camera on a cop car, and this deputy gets called in to investigate something pertaining to a meteor shower, because it's at night and there's all sorts of strange phenomena about this meteor shower that's coming into the town. And so this deputy, he gets a call from a resident that there's a meteor crashed nearby this one where this one resident had happened to be parked, and he says he's seeing something moving in it. And so the deputy, he's kind of back and forth with his supervisor, and the guy says, "Hey, might be nothing, but this guy is old time resident. Just go check it out." And so the deputy heads over, and you're seeing this all from the perspective of the cop, the camera in the cop car, and he finds the old guy's truck, and doesn't find the guy at first, but he finds a spot with the meteor, and he's looking around, he's looking at it, and he says, I mean, it looks like there might be something moving in there. But then that resident that he was trying to find comes up behind him, attacks him, and infects him by passing this parasite from I guess his mouth or his ears, is something. It was kind of hard to tell, into the deputy. And next thing you know, the deputy is infected with this parasite that's come from the meteor, and so the old guy and the deputy they start communicating with each other in this bizarre alien sounding language, and it's actually just backwards or reverse talk. And I guess if you have something to play it back on, you can find out what they're really saying. But anyway, though, so it passes for some sort of weird alien language, and they're walking around all zombie and stiff like. And so the now possessed deputy gets back into his car, and he's driving around this trail, and it's in this park, and he comes across another parked car, and there's a girl in there named Cheryl Cooper, and she and her boyfriend were in the car arguing. It turns out that it was a prom night, and they wanted to get away from it to talk about some stuff, and they chose that particular park on that particular night, unfortunately. And so the deputy, he comes out of the car and goes over to the couple, attacks them, and unfortunately the boyfriend, he gets a parasite passed on to him. And so Cheryl, she actually manages to get out of the car and run into the deputy's car and sort of carjacks it, and to get away, because she realizes that, okay, there's something wrong here, when her boyfriend, who was just attacked by this deputy, is now trying to attack her. And so she's driving around trying to find a way out, but it seems like wherever she goes, trails blocked off. And so because the deputy, before he was possessed, was in contact with the supervisor, Cheryl, she happens to be able to reach out to the supervisor as well. And so there's like this back and forth conversation, and she's trying to tell him what's going on, and he's initially thinking that this is a prank that some school kids have done, like they've stolen a police car for a prom night joyride or something. But as the movie goes on, while she's freaking out trying to find a way out of this park, you hear things on the supervisor's side, and he's starting to get recalls from all of these people in his precinct or his town or whatever you want to call it. Strange events, people walking around all zombie like, or in sort of like an organized attack in some cases. And so anyway, though, the supervisor eventually realizes, okay, or the chief, I keep saying supervisor, the chief, he realizes, okay, there's something going on here. And so he's having to try and keep his township from falling apart, but he's also trying to reassure this poor girl that hey, your help's on its way, but just keep moving, don't stay in one spot if you can help it. And so this whole time you're seeing it from her perspective, or from the camera's perspective, but since she's driving the car, she's the character that the film focuses on for the most part. And so this whole time, you're getting sort of like loose hand information about this alien invasion that's stemming from these meteorites that are passing overhead. And so, the question is, will she be able to make it out of the park in this stolen police car, or is she going to be one of the victims of these parasites? And also, will the township be able to be defended against these parasites as well? So anyway, the movie is just about an hour long, and I mean that was a decent enough runtime for it. And there were some things that I kind of liked about the movie, and it was definitely fascinating seeing it from one fixed perspective, because they, aside from a bookend at the beginning and ending of the movie, the whole film is shot in one take. It's from that camera that was on the police car. And so I definitely thought it was interesting going from the perspective, first of the deputy, but then when he gets possessed and then Cheryl ends up getting in the car, she's the perspective of the movie, you see it, or you're getting it from her perspective, even though it's the exact same camera. And she and the chief, it's talking over the radio. The two of them, I liked how they have a sort of a rapport with one another, or they develop a rapport, as the situation gets worse, and she's trying to tell him as much as she can about what's going on the trail, and he's trying to tell her everything that's going on in the town. And once again, you're only finding this out, through loose information, or secondhand information, from the chief, because you're seeing it all from the camera's perspective, which this whole time is on this trail at night, but you're hearing about all these things that are going on in the town. And so there were some pretty good moments in that regard. I mean, like, as far as the two of them developing their relationship, as far as trusting one another and trying to communicate, but also you see moments where the poor girl, she kind of just breaks down on more than one occasion, because I mean, she's just a teenager who was initially out on prom night and didn't plan on getting caught in an invasion, and nor did she plan on did she realize her boyfriend was going to be one of the victims of these little parasites. And so yeah, I mean, it was interesting from that perspective. And I also thought that while you could definitely tell the movie was on a low budget, I appreciated the fact that the people who made the movie, they kind of went out of their way to explain why the car was staying on the same trail this whole time. Because like they were talking about how every time they tried to get out of there, it was trails were blocked off, exits were blocked off, or just when she thought she was heading out of it, some of the possessed townspeople would zoom in on her in one of the cars. And so they went out of their way to, I mean, yes, it was a low budget movie, but within the movie they tried to make it actually kind of make sense as to why she's just staying on this darn trail the whole time. Now the area where I felt like the movie kind of struggled was the fact that on a visual standpoint, I mean, it meets just about most of the requirements that found footage movie needs. But this was Albert Pyun's first film within the found footage genre, and there were some things that he did, or I guess he and the people making the movie did, that are kind of a no-no within the found footage genre. And one of them was the fact that there were points where there's actually a soundtrack. And I don't mean, music that just happens to be on the radio of the car, but I mean, like, if you're watching a movie, like just, a regular movie, and, you got your, you got music playing, for for the certain scenes, but this is a found footage movie. That's not supposed to happen, and so I was watching the movie, and there'd be moments where I was kind of getting caught up in it, just because staying on the trail, actually turns out to be kind of interesting when you're hearing about all these, things happening over the radio. But then there'd just be this random suspenseful music starts playing, or that started playing, and yeah, and I know it sounds, trivial, but when you're watching this kind of movie, you want to be immersed in it. I mean, hopefully, if you watch any movie, you want to be immersed in it. But with a found footage movie in particular, the point is it's supposed to be, set up to where it looks like it's something that's really happening. And so whenever this suspenseful music started to play, it was just like, okay, I'm sorry, you lost me. I mean, I'm still going to watch the movie, but the illusion was kind of shattered. And also, and this is where I hate to knock it, because, okay, I know, when they make low budget movies, they're kind of limited as to what they can do in terms of special effects. But there were moments when it came to, say, like, the meteorites, the first couple times you see the meteors, they look reasonably convincing enough, like a shooting star, that just happens to be blazing overhead or something like that. First couple of times, that actually works. But then something would happen, and at first I thought, it was like camera distortion or of some sort. But then it wasn't until I read up on the movie that it was supposed to be like the meteorites are crashing. And what's happening is whenever a meteorite crashes on the ground, the screen kind of lights up and almost like, I forgot what the term is, but I think it's like reverse negative or something. And when that happened, it's like, what's going on? What was this, a glitch or something? And this happens more than once. And so, and the thing is, I don't know if that would particularly be possible, if, to see if this was supposed to be from the perspective of a camera. I don't know for sure. I'm not, a camera wizard or anything like that, but just when that happened, though, when you have these random moments of everything suddenly going reverse negative for a few seconds, it made things, kind of confusing for me. And the other thing is, when it came to, the parasites, there were a couple times where you actually see them, and okay, once again, low budget movie, wasn't expecting it to be wowed by special effects or anything like that. But the problem is, like, whenever you do see the parasites, they look like something like some sort of CGI creature, like a piece of, like, I don't know, like a piece of, tar or something that just happens to be, moving around like a worm or something for a few just a couple of seconds whenever you see them. But the way they look, it doesn't look real. Like, it looks like, say, something that's obviously CGI, but also bad CGI. Like, we're talking, this movie was made in 2005, and it looks like CGI that was from the 90s. And so, like, something you'd see from a 90s, sci-fi show. But the thing is, even then, it's pretty bad CGI, because, a couple of times, like, when you see a parasite, like, say, going in someone's ear, like, you see the person on the ground, and then you see this worm-like thing, and it's just poof, it's suddenly right there, and it's like someone did, like, some sort of Microsoft, thing, or like there was like an art studio or something like that, and just pointed and clicked, and poof, there it was. And I was just like, that's pretty bad. I'm sorry, once again, low budget movie, but come on, guys. You could have done something better, with that, but but then again, you don't see them that much as far as the parasites. Anytime a parasite comes into play, for the most part, it's we're kind of relying on, that you kind of see they're sort of like puppeteer parasites in the sense that you see people who are supposed to be possessed, um, and um, and the people are just kind of moving around like they're puppets. And that's for the most part how the parasite's presence are conveyed. It's just that when you actually see them physically, the few times you do see them, like little worm-like things, it just looks really stupid. But now the people who are being controlled by parasites are kind of a mixed bag. I mean, there's not on screen, you don't see that many of them. You hear about a lot of them, like massing and communicating, but from what the sheriff is saying and over the radio. But as far as what you see on screen, it's just a couple of people. And well, let's just say that the people playing the victims of the parasites, I think there was maybe only one of them that actually managed to pull off what looked like sort of a possessed look, or at least form of movement, I guess. And so like he moved, he this one particular person, he moved like someone who actually took the time to say study, I don't know, maybe some zombie films, to see how people lurch around, like maybe watch some George Romero movies or something like that. Because when this particular guy was moving around, and by the way, it's the actor who played Cheryl's boyfriend, he's moving around and he actually does a pretty good job of looking like he's possessed. But all the other people you see, they just look like they're drunk. And so, I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but if you watch zombie movies, there's a certain gait and mannerism that good zombie actors will use, and will actually manage to make the zombies look real, or at least people who are possessed, they look real. But unfortunately, in this movie, you don't really see that, with the exception of that one actor. And that's the other thing. I mean, the acting itself, with the exception of the actors who played Cheryl Cooper, I believe her name was Virginia Dare, at least that's what it says on here. I think it's something different now. She changed it or something in real life, but she was actually pretty good. I mean, she did a good job of portraying this teenager whose night is ruined, in more ways than one, and is in a situation that's way over her head. But at the same time, she's trying to maintain a level of sanity, like she's trying to be as concise as possible and telling the sheriff what's going on over the phone. But when she has those nervous breakdowns, you're kind of like, yeah, I can understand why you're freaking out like you are. So she was pretty good in it. And I think I want to say it was Morgan Weiser. I think he's the guy who played the sheriff. I hope I have the right person, but the guy who plays the sheriff, the guy who's talking over the radio, he actually does a pretty good job too, because I mean, you don't see him a lot, like this two-way screen that they talk through over the car, but you mostly hear him over the radio, and he actually does a pretty good job of just, I guess, acting as an unofficial narrator for the situation, in a sense that he's letting Cheryl know what's going on. And so the two of them, as I mentioned before, they develop a good rapport, for the situation at hand. But other than those two, though, I gotta be honest, the acting really isn't what you would call good. Once again, low budget movie. It's not unexpected, but at the same time, you're kind of like, I mean, it's one thing to, I guess, portray someone who's just supposed to be an ordinary Joe, in a cop in a strange situation. In a good amount of the time, a found footage movie will do a decent job of that, because the actors playing these people, they're supposed to be real people in a nightmare situation, or at least an odd situation. So they're not supposed to be professional actors or seen in that light. But unfortunately, though, I think the other actors involved here, I mean, it would have been nice if they said, okay, I know we're doing a low budget movie, but hey, let's take some acting lessons. Let's, find out how to act naturally, but at the same time kind of go along with this weird situation that's going on here. Because the guy who plays the deputy, the one who ends up getting possessed and going after Cheryl and her boyfriend, he really wasn't that good. Like, which, I mean, wouldn't have been a problem if he had just stayed behind the camera. But when he's on camera, like when the police cruiser's camera is picking him up, he goes from just a deputy doing his job to oh, wait a minute, I'm going to pretend like I'm in an action movie and start dropping an F-bomb, and so, like, he's looking around for that one resident he was trying to find initially, before he gets possessed. And he starts saying, "Are you effing with me, so and so? Are you effing with me?" And so the thing is, you're kind of like, okay, you're a professional deputy, you're on the clock, you're on camera. Are you really going to start talking like you're, in an R-rated movie? Which, I mean, yes, it's an R-rated movie, but the thing is, this guy, he's supposed to be playing a real person, a real deputy. And I know that things, police officers are human, and when things get out of hand, they might drop an F-bomb or something like that. But when things haven't even gotten out of hand yet, and, this guy's dropping an F-bomb, you're kind of like, dude, you're trying too hard. And so, yeah. So whenever the movie was focusing on someone other than, the characters of Cheryl and the sheriff, I don't know, it kind of killed the momentum for me, at least. Or you're kind of like, okay, all right, let's move it on some. So I'm not going to say I disliked the movie. I'm not going to say I hated it. I mean, because there were some things I liked about it. And I'll even say that there was actually an eerie moment or two, where because the cameras spent so much time on this deserted trail at night, and at a couple of points you actually start to think that you see something in the distance. Like, it looks like there's something coming towards the camera, from way off in the distance, and you're thinking, okay, is this just a dust mote floating, or is this actually someone or something coming up on the trail? And there were a couple of moments where they actually did a pretty good job of kind of having something like that happen, and you don't know which one it's going to be. So, I mean, I gotta give it some points for that. But then there'd be something that happened where it got a little confusing. Like, at one point, Cheryl, it shows up on camera too, but she starts seeing what looks like multiple versions of her coming up on the trail, towards her. And, she's freaking out. She's thinking that, there's a sign that she's going to die or something like that. But then, spoiler alert here, then it's kind of revealed to be, somehow it's a trick that's done by the parasites. And the problem with that was, I mean, it's an eerie scene, but if you're thinking about it from kind of what's supposed to be somewhat of a logical perspective within this movie, you're thinking, okay, at least I was thinking, okay, if this is something that the aliens are doing, like they're manipulating her to like hallucinate, how is that going to show up on the camera? So yeah, at that point, logic kind of starts to fall apart. Anyway, though, so they did some things right as far as having moments of suspense, but then others, it's like they had it, then they dropped it. Anyway, though, it was okay. Like, I'm glad I rented it. I'm very glad I didn't buy it, because, I mean, granted, it was like, I don't know, $5-6 or something like that. But, at that point, I'd been like, it wouldn't have been worth buying. But it was definitely worth renting, though. I mean, as someone who likes, the found footage, horror movie genre, as well as, someone who likes B movies in general, I mean, you got Albert Pyun, who is probably one of the biggest figures in the B movie community, doing a found footage movie. Like I said earlier, I was interested. So I'm glad I checked it out. Curiosity was satisfied, and there were some good moments, but there were also a lot of very amateur or confusing moments that I'm not going to say it I hated it, but at the same time, I knew I wasn't going to want to watch this movie again afterwards. And so yeah, I it was okay. So on a 5-star scale, I'm going to give Invasion 2 out of 5. If you're someone who's strictly into mainstream movies, but maybe you're interested in the found footage, genre, I mean, there are better, movies out there that can serve as an introduction to that. Invasion, I wouldn't recommend as far as being an introduction to that. Now, if you're someone who's already familiar with, such movies, and you're wanting to check out, a found footage movie that you haven't seen before, I mean, I would say, okay, yeah, I mean, Invasion, it's worth renting at least, but I wouldn't buy it, So yeah, if you're a B movie fan or found footage movie fan, it's worth a rental, but, outside of that, you're really not going to miss much by not, watching it. Yeah, that was my review of Invasion. And thank y'all very much for taking the time to check it out. And if y'all have any questions, comments, drop a line, let me know. Y'all have a good day.